Released in 1988 by the infamous Mystique, Cathouse Blues is one of those titles that remains a part of Atari 2600's obscure, yet controversial history. As part of a series of adult-oriented games, Cathouse Blues stands out due to its adult themes, questionable content, and strange place in the world of classic gaming. Cathouse Blues is a simple yet awkward simulation that attempts to immerse players in the role of a pimp running a brothel. The goal of the game is to manage and control the various girls, ensuring they are doing their job while keeping the lawmen off your tail. Players must guide the characters through the brothel's halls, avoid encounters with the police, and ensure that each customer is attended to. However, the gameplay mechanics are rather clunky, with basic movement controls and simplistic interactions. There's little depth to the game beyond running around and managing the brothel's operations. The lack of variety and limited objectives make it feel repetitive very quickly, and there is very little strategy involved in what should have been a management-style game. In true Atari 2600 fashion, Cathouse Blues offers very basic, blocky visuals that are far from impressive by today's standards. Character designs are extremely simplistic, and the environments are nothing more than abstract representations of a brothel. While the Atari 2600's graphical limitations are understandable, there's little effort here to hide the game's budget and rushed development. The game's visuals are uninspired, and the lack of detail makes it hard to feel truly immersed in the world. The sound design in Cathouse Blues is minimal at best. There are few sound effects, and the music, if you can call it that, is forgettable and unremarkable. The few sound effects that exist are repetitive and don't add much to the experience. For a game attempting to tackle mature themes, the lack of any meaningful or atmospheric audio further undermines the game's ability to engage players. One of the key points of interest around Cathouse Blues is its controversial nature. Cathouse Blues was far from subtle in its approach. The game's premise, centered around managing a brothel, directly involved themes of prostitution, exploitation, and adult entertainment, which many felt were inappropriate for the family-oriented console market of the time. Mystique, the publisher, had a reputation for pushing boundaries with titles that were clearly marketed toward adult players. However, this did not sit well with the broader public, particularly parents, consumer advocacy groups, and some politicians who were concerned about the influence of violent or sexual content on young minds. The 1980s was a time when video games were still largely regarded as toys for children, and the Atari 2600 was particularly popular in households with younger audiences. As gaming was expanding into the mainstream, the idea of exposing young players to adult-themed content through such a widely available medium was seen as highly problematic. Critics argued that Cathouse Blues, like Custer's Revenge, trivialized issues of exploitation and human dignity by turning them into a game mechanic. Instead of confronting these issues in a serious or educational way, the game reduced them to a mere form of entertainment. As the controversy grew, some countries and states moved to ban or heavily restrict the game. In the United States, the game was pulled from store shelves in certain regions, and there were calls for more regulation of video game content. It wasn't just Cathouse Blues that faced backlash. The entire genre of adult-themed games for the Atari 2600 became a target for legal action. The controversy over such games added fuel to the wider debate about the need for video game ratings and regulatory systems, which would eventually lead to the creation of the Entertainment Software Rating Board in 1994. These legal challenges, combined with the social pressure against adult-themed video games, ultimately led to the collapse of Mystique as a company. The backlash was too strong to ignore, and the negative attention surrounding their products severely damaged the brand. Mystique's decision to focus on adult-themed games was seen as a huge misstep, and it led to the company's downfall shortly after the release of Cathouse Blues. While Cathouse Blues might have made waves in the late 80s for its shock value, it ultimately fails as a game. With poor graphics, lackluster sound, and repetitive gameplay, it offers little enjoyment or lasting appeal. The game's controversial nature may make it a curiosity for retro gaming enthusiasts or collectors, but for most, it is an uncomfortable and dated relic of a time when adult-themed games on consoles were pushing boundaries in the wrong way. Unless you're a collector or curious about gaming's more controversial past, Cathouse Blues is one Atari 2600 game you can safely skip